Welcome back to Policy and Race here on Depictions Media Radio. I'm your host, Michael
Thank
Claus.
you for listening to Depictions Media
this next
Radio.
Well, let's get right down to it. We're going to be talking about or hearing from the United Nations, and there's an expert on what is going on in Haiti as far as human rights, justice systems, and all of this.
Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy,
the United States and Canada.
human rights.
Are kind of disappearing by the wayside, and the whole entire country is being taken over by gangs. And the justice system is being run by the gangs instead of by public officials and elected officials. And there's situations in prisons where people haven't found due process, where the judges are tossing people back out onto the streets because they shouldn't have been in jail to begin with. And the jails are being used by the gangs to house people who are trying to push back against what it is they're actually doing. And there's a whole lot of other human rights or just violations of humanity that are happening in Haiti because of the gangs and the lack of justice. That other things are like medications and food and things like that aren't being distributed because of the gangs having taken over. So there's a whole long list of things that is going to be talked about in this segment from the United Nations on Haiti and what is actually happening. Also, we have a press conference from the North American, or should I say the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or otherwise known as NATO, where they're talking about the inductance of a few countries such as Sweden and Finland, and the steps that they have to go through in order to become a member of NATO, how they have to prove that they aren't supplying arms and or cash to terrorist groups or groups that would work against NATO. So there's a whole lot of due process, and they're going to talk about the steps that these countries have to make, especially Sweden, in order to become part of NATO, and what it means to actually have these other countries being part of NATO and securing not only the North Atlantic, but part of the Arctic Circle for the United States and for Canada and other countries that come close to the Arctic. Because as we know, on the other side of the Arctic, we still have Siberia. And the Russian government and parts of what would be China-controlled Mongolia coming close to the Arctic from that direction. So what does it actually mean to keep the Arctic secure for democracy and for Western governments, as opposed to the security towards Eastern governments? So a lot to be thought about with the Arctic and securing these other countries into NATO, and how it keeps the world a little more secure and a little more free. So why don't we move on, and we can listen to the two press conferences as we hear about what's happening in Haiti and also with NATO. We're about to hear from William O'Neill, human rights expert on Haiti and what Haiti needs to move forward as a country.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to this press conference by Mr. William O'Neill. He has been designated by the High Commissioner Volker Turk as human rights expert in Haiti. He has just concluded his 10-day mission to the country, and we'll talk to you. He'll do opening remarks, and then he'll take your questions. Thank you. Bill?
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Bonjour, everyone, and thank you for coming. My name is William O'Neill, and I'm the human rights expert on Haiti for the United Nations. I recently spent 10 days in Haiti on a fact-finding mission. I have been working on Haiti for over 30 years now, and I have never seen the situation as bad as it is now. Gangs control over 50% of the capital. They rule ruthlessly, kidnapping, extorting, and terrorizing the population. Many areas of the capital city are off limits to the Haitian National Police. In some instances, the police have colluded with gangs. The impact on economic, social, and cultural rights is devastating. Children cannot go to school, markets are closed, or merchants must pay a tax, quote unquote, to gangs. Health clinics cannot operate, and the basic activities of daily life can entail great risks. The gangs are responsible for sexual violence against women and young girls. They use sexual violence to terrorize the population and to demonstrate their control. Gang rapes have become common. I interviewed 2 victims of sexual violence who described how they were beaten and abused and even burned with pieces of hot, melting plastic. The Haitian state, barely present in gang-controlled areas even before this recent wave of violence, is totally absent now. The state, following a report by the High Commissioner for Human Rights and the Integrated Bureau in Haiti in October of last year on sexual violence, committed to provide services and support to the victims. Yet nothing has been done so far. The victims told me that they feel abandoned and alone. I visited the prisons in Port-au-Prince and Cape Haitian. The conditions are cruel, inhuman, and degrading. The National Penitentiary in the capital in particular is horrific. Detainees are kept inside squalid, hot, and overcrowded cells for hours at a time. There is no water or any toilet inside. They must sleep in shifts because there's not enough room for all to lie down at the same time. The cells in Cape Haitian are similarly jammed, but at least there, the director has found a way to have garbage and human waste removed every day. This is not the case in the capital, where I saw a pile of waste, including human excrement, as 10 feet high, 15 feet long, right next to where the health dispensary is. Patients with tuberculosis and other diseases live right next to this. The odor nauseating and the risks to health obvious. Over 80%, I'll say that again, over 80% of those in detention have never been tried or convicted of any crime. I interviewed one person who said he was accused of a petty theft, yet he has been in prison for 7 years awaiting trial. I heard similar stories from other detainees who cannot afford lawyers and are literally rotting in prison. This situation illustrates a massive failure in the justice system. Judges are supposed to charge or release anyone accused within 48 hours of arrest. Prosecutors are charged with visiting prisons every month to ensure conditions are humane. Yet these legal obligations are rarely enforced, and even rarer is anyone held to account for failing to perform. Weak accountability, combined with rampant corruption, results in state institutions that fail to protect human rights. The population, understandably, has little confidence. State officials are rarely punished, and oversight mechanisms are weak. Until this aspect of governance is addressed, the human rights situation will remain dismal regardless of how much aid arrives or if the violence decreases. I did see, however, some positive developments which show that even with the violence and lack of resources, progress can occur. We are not asking for the impossible. The new chief prosecutor in Port-au-Prince, for example, has already released detainees held in police stations that he has visited. He told me that he has established quotas for his office requiring a certain number of cases to be resolved every week, and he will make public announcements of any results. The anti-corruption unit has made significant strides in investigating some major corruption cases. They receive threats every day, yet they continue their work. Investigating Judge Morin, for example, was almost killed a few weeks ago by armed men who fired 13 bullets at his vehicle. Judge Morin is investigating several high-profile corruption cases. Other judges are investigating cases involving former senators, the head of customs, and the head of the National Social Assistance Program. The Haitian National Police suffer from shortages of personnel and all types of equipment. Yet when I met the head of the police in the north of the country, he described how he has gained the trust of the population, which has led to effective operations against gangs. He makes sure his officers are out visibly patrolling. He insists on strict discipline, and every complaint of police misconduct is investigated. The Haitian National Police Inspector General told me that 80 officers have been suspended and under investigation for misconduct or criminal activity. The police leadership also is investigating allegations of police participation in the Bois Calais movement, which is a form of vigilante justice. I urge the police leadership to complete these investigations and to take any necessary action. The police, however, needs help to combat the gangs. International police experts in fighting organized crime, armed gangs, financial crimes, kidnapping, and in how to conduct urban operations while working alongside the Haitian National Police would provide the support needed for success. All involved would have to observe human rights principles involving the use of force, arrest, and detention. Strict and independent oversight is needed to assess any well-founded allegations of any violations of these principles. I also call for an embargo on all arms and ammunition shipments to Haiti, except for those necessary to help the Haitian National Police to perform its tasks. Haiti manufactures not a single gun or bullet, yet the gangs are the ones receiving large amounts of both, primarily from the United States. The mass deportations from the Dominican Republic, especially of unaccompanied minors, violate human rights standards and a bilateral protocol between the two countries. The children returned have often been mistreated and some are malnourished. I urge all countries in the region to end mass deportations, given the relentless violence and systematic human rights violations in Haiti. Haiti is bruised by violence, misery, fear, and suffering, but it is not without hope. Brave people, especially those in civil society and some in state institutions, are achieving positive results even with limited resources. With strong will and focused support from the outside, Haiti can escape this downward spiral. As my Haitian friends always remind me in Creole, Kembe fem palage, which essentially means stay strong, don't give up. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Bill, for a briefing. Edie?
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Neill. On behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing, my name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. You said last week at the end of your visit to Haiti that a specialized international force is needed to help fight gang violence in Haiti, and you again reiterated a call for a weapons embargo immediately. You're now in New York. Are you talking to members of the UN Security Council about your report, and what reactions have you had? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I just got back Thursday night, and then with Friday and the holiday, I have started to reach out to members of the Security Council to request some meetings, and some have and even before I left, they said they really wanted to hear from me after the visit. So I intend in the next week or so to have as many discussions and meetings as possible with whoever wants to meet, but certainly with members of the Council, other member states very active on Haiti, such as Canada, and I want to pursue these issues with them and other parts of the UN system also, to brief them so that they are fully aware of what's happening. And but so far, no reactions other than, yes, please come, we want to hear you.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, hi, Frank Uciardo from TR2 World. Thank you for having this press conference. I want to get back to something you were saying earlier about the police and corruption, and then you were also saying about the police working with vigilantes. Does it seem like the national police force there is so corrupt that they will go in either direction, wherever the money is or wherever it benefits them, to the detriment of the civilians?
No, I think there are some, as in any police force, even here in the NYPD, there are some police who are corrupt. There are some police in Haiti that have colluded with the gangs. There's some fairly seriously documented cases in the past and even to fairly recent times. But not all, by no means all. There are some really brave, courageous Haitian police who are literally really risking their lives fighting the gangs. They're outgunned in most cases. But I would say, and also I should add, the police have started a vetting program where they are doing a pretty serious look at who they have, what their records are, are there any complaints, are there any suspicions, and can you get evidence that police have acted either misconduct, abuse of power, criminal activity, or even this collusion with the gangs. And I met with senior Haitian National Police leadership, including the Inspector General, who's responsible for this, and they have told me they are committed to taking a serious look at the integrity and competence of all the members of the Haitian National Police. So I have confidence that they will do this. I have confidence that most of the police are good and honest and really trying. And I also know that there are some that are not. And I hope that they will identify those who are not and they will be removed from the HMP.
You said you've been there over the past 3 decades, and it's the worst you've ever seen it. The tone in these situations is usually set from the top. How corrupt is the government there now?
Well, I can't speak for every level, every officer, but I will tell you that so many different Haitians told me corruption is our number one enemy. And that's not new. That's been, unfortunately, a very long-standing problem in Haiti. I can't speak to individual in the government and their complicity or not, or their actions in being corrupt or not. I can tell you that I had a very good meeting with the head of the anti-corruption unit, who has 30 cases under investigation now, involving some very senior people, including, as I think I mentioned in my statement, the former head of customs. And that's a big deal because it's interesting. He was arrested, and now the case is going forward. I think he was arrested sometime in March or early April. There's a new person in charge. Customs collections in Haiti in April and May set records for getting taxes and the duties and everything else, which shows you that a lot was not being paid. And there's a new sheriff in town. And that's fantastic, because Haiti always has this issue of we don't have enough of this, we don't have enough of that. But if you actually collect taxes and duties from people who should be paying them, and then you can fund government properly, then you can pay the police, you can hire more police, you can pay school teachers, you can keep health clinics with medicine and staff being paid properly. The question now is really to watch, is that new customs revenue being spent in the way it should be? But corruption is certainly a big problem. I think this unit is working very hard. As I said, they have 30 cases, some serious senior people, and then the sanctions regime, I should mention that, the sanctions regime that already has been initiated by the United States, Canada, the Dominican Republic, and I hope soon by the United Nations, has also identified from some very serious people, former president, former prime minister, former heads of the Senate, other politicians, some very major business people. So I think if that regime kicks in and this internal domestic effort to fight corruption can gain steam, you can start to turn things around in Haiti. That's why I keep saying it's not hopeless. People are doing some really good things now, but it's not easy and it's dangerous. I said this one investigating judge almost got killed 3 weeks ago.
The Secretary General seems to be having a bit of a difficult situation with rounding up the political will in the region to send in voluntary police forces or troops to help out the police force there. What's your reaction to the situation?
I would hope that people would come forward, different states could come forward, because I think it's needed. It's certainly needed. The Haitian National Police will tell you that. I would say that the people I talk to in Haiti, and I'm not going to pretend I have have a global, foolproof survey that I could cite to you, but the people I talk to from all walks of life overwhelmingly want some outside help to come. They're very clear they don't want another, let's say, large MINUSTA with 12,000 troops and this and that. They do want expertise focused on the gang violence, which is kind of specialized expertise that would help, support, reinforce, backstop the Haitian National Police, so that it would be still a Haitian-led effort, but not a Haitian-only effort. It would include others from outside that have this expertise that could be helping and supporting their own police and then their justice system and everything else. So I think, I hope that time is running. It's been many months now. It doesn't, the situation each day is bad. So I hope at some point soon there will be enough of a consensus that this kind of help could materialize in Haiti.
Go ahead, Edie.
Yeah, a couple of follow-ups. Is there a size for an international force that you think would be effective? Are we talking about, 100? Are we talking about 1,000? What do you think would be needed?
This is not my area of expertise. What type of I do have thoughts on what type of expertise is needed. Purely as a layman, my own personal assessment would be certainly not MINUSTA before, but not 100. I think probably 1,000 to 2,000, but it's more important the quality than the quantity, I think. The quality of the support. These are really good people who know this issue, who know about how to do these do this kind of policing work while respecting human rights. That's be crucial. I think that's my view.
Right, and you said that over 80% of those in detention have not been charged. How many people are in detention, and did you talk to anyone about doing anything about trying to get them charged or released? Yes.
The most recent number, if I remember correctly, is 11,775. That's I think what it was that I got from prison authorities and UN prison corrections people working in Binu. That is about 4 times the capacity of the prison system in Haiti. Yeah, so if you added up what numbers should be there, it's about 4 times. So that's one reason why you have such incredible overcrowding, and with the conditions that result. Just the heat. I mean, I walked up to some of those cells and looked inside, and the heat and the smell, and people are literally they're sitting up on bunks and they're crammed in, and they're in there for hours at a time, and it's just absolutely incomprehensible to me. Talk to people, yes. I met the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister said, we must do something about our prisons. He said that, and others too. Everybody, the prison director, the commissaire de gouvernement who's in charge of the prison, everyone said this is a major issue. And this is something that can be solved. This you can't really say, there's insecurity. No, these are areas that the government that has custody of these people. I asked, why isn't the trash picked up, to the director of the prison in Port-au-Prince? Why is this pile there? He said, well, there's a contract with the company, but the company stopped coming because they said they hadn't been paid. Well, if that's true, then of course. So why isn't the company being paid? That's the question. So, and these are not complicated technical issues, and the judges need to go. This one commissaire in Port-au-Prince has already made a difference, and he's going and he's saying, okay, why are you in here? And that charge is too petty. You shouldn't have been arrested. That's a minor offense. We'll deal with it later. Out you go. So I think there are some people who are committed to doing this, but the justice system really has to take this on. It really has to process these cases and either charge them, okay, or release them.
Yes, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dulcie Linebuck from Pass Blue. It sounds like the numbers of outside experts may not need to be that high. Are you talking about actual troops? Are you talking about police experts? And the people you talked to who said that they need this assistance, what countries do they not want to send troops or experts or however you want to describe these outsiders? Thanks.
Sure. I'm talking, me as Bill O'Neill, I'm talking about more police, not troops, not soldiers. I'm talking about people who know how to look at an organized criminal network, a gang, and analyze where's their money coming from, where are their weapons coming from, how do they operate, and then how do we as police, public security experts counter that. The meeting I had with the Haitian National Police leadership said one of their biggest weaknesses is in intelligence gathering. So that's something I would hope whoever would come would have a capacity to analyze intelligence, whether that's, getting everyone, all the gang leaders are on their cell phones all the time. So how would you be able to maybe identify where they are, identify, how if their money transfers on those, who knows, everything's done by phones these days. But anyway, the intelligence and analysis of intelligence. So those kind of folks, I think is what's needed. Financial people who can identify, again, the money flows, money laundering, how are the gangs using the money they're getting to wash it, frankly, is what they do. So those are the kinds of expertise I'm talking about. Fairly specialized, but again, it's out there, and many countries have, Haiti's not unique in facing organized criminal networks like this, and money flows and weapons flows. I haven't heard anybody say, oh, we don't want them. What I did hear is we want somebody to help get the gangs off our necks so we can breathe again. That's also often what they expressed it that way, so we can breathe again, so our kids can go to school, so we can go to the market, so I can have a life, go to medical centers that actually open, and then stop being extorted. The gangs for now have basically cut off the southern part of the country. To the whole 4 provinces or departments in the southern peninsula, there's one road that goes from Port-au-Prince to those areas. Gangs control it.
If I can follow up. So you're actually talking about maybe a police contingent from, say, New York City, which has a lot of experience in dealing with corruption. I guess I just don't understand why nobody's stepping up with something as core and maybe not even that huge an investment.
Yeah, I don't understand it either. So that relates to the earlier question. I hope people see more clearly what the need is, and maybe I hope this is maybe the result of the number of visits that have just occurred to Haiti by other parts of the UN system and by me. The Secretary General was just there on Saturday. So maybe this will help clarify in people's minds what is needed and the scope of it, and maybe that would make it more palatable for some folks to step forward. Let's hope.
The Secretary General of NATO talking about introducing Sweden to NATO and the steps that they are taking and must still take in order to be a complete member of NATO.
Good afternoon. The Secretary General will update you on the meeting that's just finished, and then we'll have time for a few questions. Secretary General.
Good afternoon. I have just finished chairing a productive meeting on Sweden's membership in NATO with the delegations from Turkey, Finland and Sweden. 1 year ago at the Madrid summit, all allies agreed to invite Finland and Sweden to join our alliance. Finland and Sweden also signed a trilateral memorandum with Turkey, paving the way for their membership. Since then, Finland and Sweden have implemented this memorandum, including through meetings of the Permanent Joint Mechanism to strengthen cooperation on counterterrorism, organized crime and other common challenges. All allies stand together against terrorism, and at next week's NATO summit, we will recommit to fight against terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. In April, we welcomed Finland into the NATO family. This has been a game changer for our shared security. And now it is time for Sweden to join the alliance. I have been clear that Sweden has delivered on the commitments it made under the trilateral memorandum. Sweden has amended its constitution and introduced new anti-terrorist legislation, removed restrictions on arms exports to Turkey, and stepped up counterterrorism cooperation, including against PKK. In the meeting, we all agreed that we have made good progress. We all agree that the full membership of Sweden is in the security interest of all allies, and we all want to complete this process as soon as possible. We have seen demonstrations against Turkey and against NATO in Sweden. They want to stop Sweden from joining NATO, to disrupt counterterrorism cooperation, and weaken our alliance. So we must be clear-eyed. The only people who benefit from these provocations are those who want to divide NATO. Any further delay in Sweden's membership would be welcomed by the PKK and President Putin. Sweden's membership will bring major military benefits to the whole alliance. Adding Sweden will allow us to plan for the defense of the entire Arctic, Nordic, Baltic region as one. It will provide an uninterrupted shield from the Black to the Baltic Sea region. Sweden's membership in NATO will make us all stronger and safer. Today, we reaffirmed that Sweden's membership is within reach, and that ratification of Sweden's membership does not mean the end of cooperation with Turkey. Far from it, as Finland's continuing engagement here today shows. On Monday in Vilnius, I will convene a meeting with President Erdogan and Prime Minister Kristersson as the next step in this process. With that, I'm ready to take your questions.
We'll start with Anadolu.
Thank you. Turkish news agency Anadolu, Mr. Secretary General, you repeatedly said that Sweden has delivered on the memorandum signed in Madrid. Apparently, Turkish officials do not agree with that. Also, most recently, Sweden was at the center of reactions from the Muslim world. There was a reaction from the large part of the world. Do you think such a reaction would pose a risk to NATO? Also, do you think Sweden could have an effective counterterrorism mechanism, or would it be a burden on NATO?
Well, there's no doubt that Sweden has made very important steps and has followed up on the commitments under the trilateral memorandum agreed in Madrid at the NATO summit last year. Sweden has removed restrictions on arms exports, and new licenses have been granted for exports of defense material from Sweden to Turkey. Sweden has amended its constitution to be able to strengthen its legislation, and the Swedish counterterrorism legislation has been strengthened. Then we have established a permanent mechanism, which is a mechanism to ensure that we have a framework to exchange information, to share intelligence, and this has taken place within the framework of the permanent mechanism, but also bilaterally between Sweden and Turkey. And at the meeting today, we had the director of the Swedish security services, SEPO, present in the room. So there was a possibility actually to go into specific issues, also with both the Turkish and the Swedish security services present in the meeting. And this does demonstrate a very close cooperation and the follow-up of the Madrid joint memorandum. So I'm absolutely confident that that this will continue, and that was also a clear message from Sweden. Then, of course, the reason why we meet today, and also the reason why I have convened a meeting of President Erdogan and Prime Minister Kristersson on Monday, is to bridge the gap we still see between what Sweden has done and the understanding that Turkey has related to what extent Sweden has implemented the memorandum. But the only way to solve those differences is by doing what we always do in NATO, and that is to sit down, to consult, and to find a way forward. And we made good progress in the meeting today. It is absolutely possible to have a positive decision at the summit next week. And we all agreed that the finalization, the ratification of Swedish membership into NATO should happen as soon as possible.
Okay, TV4.
Ritva Ramberg, TV4 Sweden. So what do you see as the next step? Is there at all possible for Sweden to be a member during the Vilnius summit? Or are we now expecting a new round of negotiations after that meeting?
What is possible and what we are all working to achieve is a positive decision at the summit where Turkey makes clear that they are ready to ratify. But then we still have some more work to do, and we are working on that now. We had a meeting today. We will work over the weekend, and then I will meet with the Prime Minister and the President on Monday. But of course, a ratification in the Turkish Parliament will not happen before Monday. But we can have important political decisions. But to ensure that to happen, we will work hard from now and until Monday.
Okay, Yle.
Thanks very much, Rickard Husu, Finnish Broadcasting Company, YLE. I was wondering if you could be more specific regarding where progress has been made in these talks, and I'm also interested in your opinion on the role of this tripartite format in general, especially from the point of view of Finland, which is already a member of NATO.
First of all, it is agreement that Sweden has implemented and followed up on the trilateral agreement. The difference between Sweden and Turkey is that Sweden says that they have followed up sufficiently to be fully ratified, and I agree with that position that the time has come to finalize the Swedish accession and to ratify the Swedish accession protocols. The Turkish position is that yes, Sweden has made important steps forward, but something remains, something more has to be done. And what we now are looking into, how can we bridge that difference to ensure that we have a positive decision at the summit in next week in Vilnius. Then it is important that Finland is part of the permanent mechanism and that Finland participated in the meeting today because the agreement in Madrid was that Finland and Sweden on a permanent basis should continue to work with Turkey to counter terrorism and to strengthen their cooperation, including when it comes to arms exports. And therefore, I welcome the Finnish participation. Finland will not be present at the meeting on Monday, but that's because on Monday we are going to address the specific issue on how to resolve the remaining issues between Sweden and Turkey related to the ratification of the Swedish membership. But both Finland and Sweden will continue to be part of the permanent mechanism, continue to work together with Turkey to fight terrorism. You asked me about concrete examples. Well, in the meeting today, Sweden went through the specific changes they have made on the constitution, on arms exports licenses, on strengthening the legislation, and will also refer to specific cases. For instance, today there was a decision in the Swedish court to sentence a Kurdish man with attempting to extort money for a group that is outlawed in Turkey, as a PKK. And that's an example of how organized crime in Sweden is closely linked to terrorist organizations in Turkey. So, of course, for Sweden it is important to fight organized crime and also terrorism, but it highlights in a way that this is also in the interest of Sweden to fight these groups and these people, because terrorism and organized crime in Sweden is extremely closely linked, and the verdict of the Swedish court today, based on the enhanced legislation, is an example of that.
Al Jazeera. Here.
James Bayes from Al Jazeera. It was May last year that the two countries applied to join. I remember at the time officials saying maybe you could fast-track their entry before the Madrid summit. Now we're a whole year on, another summit coming. How frustrating is this for allies? And does it project disunity as you're about to gather in Vilnius? And if I could, also a quick comment on the reports that Prigozhin is back in St. Petersburg.
First of all, I think we have to remember that this has been a very quick accession process, especially, of course, for Finland. But Finland and Sweden applied in May last year. Already in June, they both were invited. And that hasn't happened before in NATO's modern history. And the decision to invite both Finland and Sweden led to, of course, the full membership of Finland a few months later. But it also made a huge difference for Sweden, because when Sweden got the invitee status in June, just weeks after the application, Sweden started to become integrated into NATO military and civilian structures. So Sweden is already in a much better and stronger place than they were before they applied, because by the decision of all allies, including Turkey, to give them the invitee status, they are now participating in NATO meetings, they sit around the NATO table, they participate in NATO's military and civilian structures, so that has been an important step by itself. And then my aim is to then finalize this process in the near future and to have a concrete and positive decision next week. So then it will still be a quick ratification process and one of the fastest accession processes in NATO's modern history, also for Sweden. Then on Prigozhin, well, what we can say is that we monitor closely where the Wagner soldiers are moving around, and also where he is moving. I will not go into the details, but we have seen some preparations for hosting large groups of Wagner soldiers in Belarus. So far, we haven't seen so many of them going to Belarus, and then we have seen Mr. Prigozhin moving a bit around. I'm not going into many more details than that.
Reuters.
Secretary General, in terms of bridging the gap that you talked about, is there anything that Sweden can do between now and then to help bridge that gap, in your opinion? And is there anything that any other allies could do to bridge the gap, particularly the United States, in terms of bringing pressure to bear or offering things to the Turkish president that might get him to decide that now is the time to go ahead with ratification?
So this is about Swedish ratification, or the ratification of the Swedish application to NATO, the Swedish accession protocols, what is then the main focus is, of course, what has been agreed already. We agreed a joint memorandum where Sweden committed to do a specific list of things, which is related to lifting arms export restrictions, changing their legislation, engaging in closer cooperation with Turkey on counterterrorism, and participating in the permanent mechanism. Of course, Sweden can always deliver more under those headlines. because you can always change more information. You can always have even closer cooperation. You can always grant more export licenses. But I will not go into exactly what Sweden can do between now and the summit. This is a dialogue also which is going on between Sweden and Turkey. When it comes to other allies, I think that the message has been very clear from other allies that all of them except for Hungary has already ratified, and by doing that they have sent a very clear message that this is something they strongly believe it's good for the whole alliance, that also Sweden becomes a full-fledged member. And in particular, the Baltic allies, they see the value for their security to have Sweden, a Baltic nation, becoming a full member. Let me also add that we met today and we agreed the memorandum last year because we recognize that Turkey has legitimate security concerns. That was stated also in the meeting today. No other ally has suffered more terrorist attacks than Turkey. PKK is a terrorist organization. They are also involved in organized crimes in many NATO allied countries. And when we can work more closely together, when we can have decisions like we have in Sweden today in the Swedish court, that is good for all of us. It's good for the fight against terrorism. It's good in the fight against organized crime. And it demonstrates that NATO allies are taking the legitimate security concerns of Turkey seriously.
SVT.
Yes, Regina Swedberg-Ågren, Sveriges Television, SVT. What does it mean for NATO if this process keeps on going without Sweden being accepted at Vilnius meeting? And what has NATO offered Turkey in this process? And last, I would like a comment on you, Mr. Secretary, has been asked to stay on for yet another year. What's your commentary on that?
So first of all, the fight against terrorism is important for the whole alliance. And at the summit, we'll actually make important decisions as an alliance in our efforts to fight terrorism. Because we will agree new plans for our deterrence and defense, new regional defense plans. And the purpose of these plans is to address our two main threats, which is Russia's aggressive actions, the threats that Russia poses to NATO allies, but also terrorism. So when we increase the readiness of our forces, when we invest in new capabilities, when we have more exercises, when we increase our presence throughout the alliance, then we also are stepping up in our surveillance, in our readiness to fight terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. So NATO is stepping up in the fight against terrorism, and we will make important decisions related to capabilities, to plans at the summit in Vilnius. The first question was about. Well, so first of all, we are. Also, my main ambition is now to get this agreed by the summit. Of course, there is no guarantee, but we are working hard. We had a good meeting today. We are making progress, and I'm certain that we will continue to make progress over the weekend. And then I will meet with President Erdogan and Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson, and then hopefully we can find a common ground to make a positive decision on the completion of the Swedish accession into NATO. When it comes to myself, I can just say that I'm honored to continue to serve as Secretary General of NATO, especially now when we face the most dangerous security situation in Europe for decades with a full-fledged war, and to be able to steer the alliance when we step up our support for Ukraine, and also continue to strengthen our deterrence and defense in the way we'll do at the summit next week.
Okay, we'll take one last question, Associated Press.
Lorne Cook from the Associated Press. Secretary General, you've said several times and again today that Sweden has done what is required of it. Do you today, after this meeting, understand what President Erdogan wants I don't expect you to tell me, but do you understand exactly what's required to get this done, what Sweden needs to do?
I understand what President Erdogan is asking for, and we have met them many, many times, and we have discussed them in detail, and that's exactly why we have been able to make progress. We made an important step last year after close consultations with President Erdogan. Also at the meeting in Madrid, where we sat together for many hours and were able to make an historic decision where also Turkey agreed to invite both Finland and Sweden. Then we have worked since then on the ratification. There are some unsolved issues. We are addressing them now. We'll work on it over the weekend, meet again on Monday, and then I will be able to tell you more on the whole progress we then have hopefully made by then.
Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow, I hope, for the pre-summit press conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, we talk a lot on here about democracy and how we have to keep up with all the votes and make sure that we're actually getting our voice out there, because that's part of what democracy is really about, is being able to have the freedom of speech, the freedom to choose, and the freedom of information. You know, you've probably heard us talk several times, and we've done other segments on Bill C-18 and how that is going to affect the transfer of information. We need to ensure that we get the information that we need so that we can vote, know what we're voting for, so that we can choose the right things for our society, the right things for our way of life, for your way of life. It's your way of life, and you need to be able to decide on how you're going to do that. And we need to pay attention to what is happening as far as information. We're talking right now. We're talking about Haiti, and we're talking about NATO and Finland and Sweden. But we also need to pay close attention to what it is that our government is saying here in Canada about this particular bill. What is the effect it is actually going to have on the information that you can gather on issues in your own neighborhood? And for those of you who listen in other parts of the world, understand that government control can happen wherever we are, and that if we don't speak up about issues, we don't fight for our own freedoms, try to keep government in a balanced and completely transparent place, that you can have government-controlled information that would resemble that of Russia or maybe even China, where if you say one thing about the government in the wrong way, that you can be blocked out and cut off from the rest of society. So, just some things to think about when we start to think about what does Bill C-18 really mean, and how is it going to affect how we receive information. Well, you've been listening to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio. I've been your host, Michael Clogs. Find the subscribe button wherever it is so that you can keep listening to us here at Depictions Media Radio. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.